Hello, and welcome to the Old Man Orange Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Ryan Dunnigan.
And this is something that I've wanted to read for a very, very long time, but is those original Men in Black comics, those ones that, you know, obviously inspired the movie and so on like that. And the weirdest thing about them is they are like next to impossible to find if you want to get the issues. They're like $100 used for each single issue, like on eBay. You know, it's weird that for Men in Black being as big as it is, I don't know why there's not graphic novels of these put back together or something like that, just released over time. But it does kind of stem from that Malibu Comics era. And something about all those Malibu comics, it's like the second that business kind of was done with, it's like those things just got like landlocked off. Like, I don't know who the hell even owns the rights to them anymore.
What else did Malibu Comics do? Because I know that name.
They did like a lot of like weird, like, kind of like movie and kind of tie-ins. Like they had that original Street Fighter run where there's like even like those kind of made-up characters in it. Like they're like the first ones to do the American comics of that. I want to say they did the Turok comics, but then I looked and I was like, oh no, that's Valiant that does those. But for the longest time, I thought that was the other one. Is Turok, the 90s version came from there. But I know there's a handful of other stuff that I just can't think of off the top of my head. But like it's that company that really felt like it only existed for like give or take 5 years, and then that's like sort of it. And all their books, whenever you see one, it's just like they're expensive, and I've never seen them re-released again.
That is kind of weird because Men in Black, every so often, I mean, we'll go into the comics themselves here, but every so often you come across one of those franchises where, I mean, it's not super uncommon, but I guess kind of case by case basis. But you come across those franchises that the thing that they're initially like, the thing that the adaptation becomes bigger than the actual IP itself, you know, like the movie was huge for a while. I know there's a fourth one that came out like about a few years ago that didn't do so good and people didn't really like it that much. I didn't see it.
It wasn't too bad. I watched it. It was decent.
With Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah. It was good. It was just like the British division. Like it kind of felt like if you're going to do one where you don't have, of course, J and K, that seemed like, okay, hey, it's just a police force on, you know, the other side of the pond. That to me is like, not logical.
Okay. I didn't see that one. And so maybe I'll check it out eventually. But it was one of those things where it's just, it's kind of weird because every so often, because like Ninja Turtles, it's something where at the time, like the cartoon and everything eclipsed the comic. But all that became so popular, people eventually went back, like, what is it based on? What's the thing that kicked it off, you know? And then you look at this, and it is something that, like, okay, you can kind of see there's obviously connections to certain plot points and characters that come into it, but it is really different, but you could still see the kickoff point of it. But it's kind of weird how, because it is a very, like, good concept for a comic. I'll be honest, I'll say it right here. Usually you won't hear me say this. I think this is a case where the movie is better.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's one of those ones. The movie's more, I guess you would say, dialed in. It's like it took this idea and, you know, just like put everything together, added like a much bigger universe. Because this one almost feels like, even though I know it's a comic, but it makes it feel like such a more smaller scale than like what the movie kind of adds to it. But like that raising the scale in the movie actually makes that universe really kind of cool to see like that. And like that's one of those ones that works out for the benefit of having all the extra CG and special effects and all that stuff.
Well, it's interesting because this one, I feel like the scale is it doesn't feel like it. The scale is kind of as big and there's less boundaries in this comic, but it still feels kind of like less defined and less fine-tuned because the whole thing with Men in Black in the comic book version is like always it's kind of like it's anything supernatural or anything that can't be explained. So it's ghosts, it's cults, it's demons, it's aliens, it's superheroes, why superheroes don't exist in the real world, you know. So it's kind of like that type of thing, and that itself it's kind of like, this is going to sound kind of like a weird comparison. I mean, I think this is a lot more less boundaries. It's kind of Rick and Morty in that way. Yeah. And not writing wise, but that way that we're just going to take all these like crazy sci-fi concepts and do whatever we want in whatever episode. Where this one is a little bit more fine tuned because it's two agents handling it. I mean, I'll be honest. I think the concept for like, if you told me the concept of like the comic and the concept of the movie, I'm like, well, the comic sounds way better. But then you watch them, like, oh, the movie's way better.
Yeah, it definitely has that. Well, it's one of those ones. It's like you could see it's just there's the cool blueprints of like all the Men in Black stuff being kind of worked out there, and it's one of those ones we're kind of generally going through. There's like the first, I guess you would say, 6 issues, and then there's sort of this mysterious seventh one, Far Cry, that we're putting heads and tails together where it exactly lies and everything. And it's one of those ones. It's like, and it's like I just don't kind of know. Maybe it's like because this dude Lowell Cunningham, the guy who wrote Men in Black or whatever, it says right there at the very beginning that he's got like 6 other books at Malibu Comics too. So like he seems like Captain Malibu right here, like literally putting together all sorts of stuff. So I don't know if he just kind of wrote Men in Black. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm gonna carry on with my Gun Fury and Cat and Mouse or whatever, like all these other stories I sort of have, and then I'll get back to Men in Black some other day, and then all of a sudden that's where like when the movie industry, I think what they did is instead of going like out and buying like the big franchise stuff at that point, they're like, what's the stuff we can get for cheap? Like that's what I felt like. Give us Tank Girl, give us Men in Black, let's get some old stuff that probably doesn't even have a copyright anymore. Give us the Rocketeer.
Yeah, I mean, I know I said like another one I said doesn't happen for another 10 years after this or whatever, but at the same time it's all those like there's like people always talk about like, oh, early comic book movies and like I mean not I guess this second wave, like Spider-Man, X-Men, around that era. But then you think back even before that, there was that period like after Batman where they're like, you know what? Yeah, Batman and Ninja Turtles, but you know what? Ninja Turtles we lucked out on. Batman is Batman. Everything else, what can we get for like dog shit cheap? Okay, what can we get? What's really cheap to get? And that's not to say they're all bad. That's not to say all the movies suck or the comics suck or anything like that. But they're just looking for, all right, people want the comic book shit, but I don't want to pay an arm and a leg for X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, exactly. That's sort of how it feels. Like, don't get me wrong. It's like because I like a lot of those, like those '90s, and even there's even proto ones because there's like Sheena, like that one's 85. So that's like a proto. That's like coming off of like the Superman wave of like comic book era movies. But it's even stuff
Sheena
like
the Jungle Queen.
Yeah, Sheena, that one, the one that's got Tanya Roberts in it.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know like, or is it? I get the Marvel one and the Dynamite Comics one or whatever it is. I get them mixed up. I forget which one's which sometimes.
Well, I think the one in Dynamite Comics is technically that's Jungle Girl.
Oh wait, then
Sheena's the one from like the 30s. Like she's one of those ones.
That's the blonde lady, right?
Yeah, she's the one. She fits along the same lines as like Dick Tracy and like the Shadow and all. Like she kind of goes in like that section of comics, like the proto superhero. I didn't know she
had a movie.
Yeah, I watched it the other day because one of the ones I always wanted to see, and then I watched it and I was like, dude, this one's actually legitimately really good. Like I was actually it felt like it had a higher budget because I was expecting to become a B movie, and I was like, no, it's like someone dropped some like change into this film. Like it looks good and like it was pretty impressive. But yeah, it's kind of that weird one that there has been comic book movies a lot longer because people almost think of like X-Men being kind of like and that's kind of the start of the big era, I guess you would sort of say, like when like you knew that this was a comic. I mean, shit, they gave out a comic book when you went to go see X-Men in theaters. They're like, here you go, have an X-Men book. Spider-Man. Yeah.
Those pre-MCU movies that did really good. Yeah, but a lot of this they didn't even advertise. This is also at a point where they didn't advertise it as a comic. I mean, I saw like the thing. Bring it back to Marvel. We'll actually get into the main comic itself in a minute, but we'll talk about the Far Cry thing because that's something that's actually advertised by owned by Marvel. Because at some point the rights got jumbled around, and this must have happened when Marvel was like in bankruptcy or went into Chapter 9 or something like that. I don't know, but because I remember watching the credits to Men in Black because I loved that movie as a kid and I still love it, but I watched it as a kid and then like saying Marvel Comics, like this is a Marvel comic, and not seeing it anywhere whenever I went out, and then like seeing the Far Cry issue at the end, and I was like, oh, okay. So I guess maybe at some point there's this thing where maybe they bought it from Malibu and then it got juggled around and like, fuck, you have a we don't know,
Yeah, it's just one of those ones you think that if they would have bought it, you just think that especially once like, especially even like when Men in Black 2 and 3, that would have been like even a most ideal time to re-release like a graphic novel that just had all these in one big fat book. You know what I mean? Like it just seems like a perfect kind of thing, but somehow, some way, this thing sort of got lost to time in a weird way. And at least we're always grateful that there's some people that like to preserve these kind of things and keep the history alive with them. And that's how we're able to kind of read it. They got it on the archive.org if anybody else wants to read it. So it's nice that a lot of those things that you can't find easily anymore and no one's selling it like, brand new, like that there is a place you can still find these like lost comics. But,
yeah. And I cut you off. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. Go on.
It's also, earlier when we were talking about this, it sounded like I was throwing a little bit of shade at this. And I'll be honest, I didn't love the comic, but I didn't think it was like a bad comic or a god-awful comic or anything. It's like, I think it's one of those comics that has like, their things are definitely a product of its time, which isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes that's a little like time machine and kind of gives you like an idea of what was popular back then. And that could be interesting in itself. But it gets repetitive. Because, it's kind of like, you could almost call this movie, if this was like, you could almost, I'm not an alt writer or anything, but you could almost call this like the Chad and the Cuck. It's really what you can call this thing. It's like half the time, or not every issue, it's like Tommy Lee Jones' characters, Kay, being like, well, let me tell you, this is how old John Wayne or Reagan would have done it. And then like Jay coming in with his like, like blonde like Tim Roth hair from Reservoir Dogs being like, well, I don't know about this, man. I think we should try another angle. Like, you go try your way. Like, let me help you.
Yeah, well, that's like almost the part that I will say, like, the stuff that's like the best of it is Kay. Kay is like the one who's like, he's written fantastic. He just plays fucking jokes on Jay the whole time, and just like the shit talking he does, like that's the thing, is just like he's just hilarious. Like that's where you like, I feel like without that Kay character, like, and it's one of those ones like Tommy Lee Jones, like you're like that's him right there. That seems so perfect. You know what I mean? Where Jay in this one, I will say, is kind of more just like, he's just almost like I don't know if he's just supposed to be like the bitch Avatar character. Like he's not well defined like Will Smith. Let's just say that he's just sort of, here's a blonde rookie coming in to figure things out the hard way. Like he literally gets thrown to the wolves.
We can more than once, and literally at one point in time that does happen, and it's one of those things like I think that can work, but the character never fucking grows. He like never grows. And the Will Smith version of the character, like I can only imagine like Will Smith in like the 90s reading this like, you want me to do what? Just being like, I just did Bad Boys and you want me to do, you gotta be shitting me. Come on.
I'm not doing Bitch Boys now.
Exactly. It's one of those things where you kind of, because like there's like, okay, if that, because I don't feel like he's entirely meant to be a total, I mean, he is kind of the ass end of every joke, but at the exact same time, he's also like, they present him serious enough at times to where he is supposed to be like a character, but then he says something really fucking stupid. So like whenever, like, he's basically the character who's there for like Kay to look cool and also to like ask all the exposition questions. And he'll say something kind of like, yeah, we got to meet with an alien diplomat. Like, an alien diplomat? Why haven't I heard of like alien diplomats before? It's like, motherfucker, this is your third day on the job. First day on the job, you had to fight a fucking exorcist lady, all right? Well, how is this fucking shocking?
Yeah, it's like one of those ones, like, yeah, he keeps doing that, like, it's like one of those ones like keep like, no, this can't be real. It's just like, dude, how much other stuff have you seen so far? You already seen Kay just phase a bunch of people left and right, and just like, you think the possibilities are endless by this point, but no, he's just questioning it there and so on like that. And literally, he feels like he's literally the character that's like, if you had Kay by himself, this would just feel like one of those comics where people be like, oh my god, you just let this old man go on a judge, jury, and execution raid of like stopping like all the paranormal and aliens and keeping them under his like fucking boot. Like, it feels like Jay's just there to be like, hey, maybe we should be nice to these guys. You know what? If this guy wants to have a rifle, this alien, insect creature. He can have my pistol. There you go, buddy. Have fun with it. See you some other time. And then I love how Kay's like, the fuck did you do that for? You just gave up your gun. Like, about 3 issues from now, that's going to really come back to kick you in the ass.
I just like to imagine it's something like he's just like, okay, here, yeah, sure, give him your gun. They're just watching the space news, and there's like a mass shooting with like, oh shit, So it's like mass shooting at the space mall by a giant bug, like oh shit,
fucking Zorak coming at you,
Fucking Zorak, that thing did look like Zorak. I forgot. No, so it's like
But I also love how Kay just stands there and like kind of goes, yeah, go ahead, do it. It literally reminds me of like that Christopher Titus scene like in the show where like Christopher Titus is a kid and he's like playing with a fork, gonna go put it in like the light socket. And the mom's like, oh, and then the dad's like, no, stop, wait a second, and then lets the kid do it, get shocked. Bet you won't do that again. Like that's literally how Kay feels in this. Like I want to see what happens.
Let him learn. But the thing is, he never fucking learns.
Oh, he just does. He just makes more mistakes every single time.
And there's like moments where he has like some real moments, but then like they're almost kind of forgotten by the end of the issue or by the next issue. And that's kind of my big problem because of the two men in black, one of the men is super cool. One of them he's the boy in black. He's not the man in black. Yeah. And it's like he's like coming in with like what was the one example? Like some kids are playing Dungeons and Dragons and they somehow have some kind of like amulet or some kind of like ancient device, and when they roll it, like this demon appears and causes havoc. Those kids are like, oh, that's fucking weird. All right, well I rolled 3 plus charisma or whatever. And then
those kids act like this happens every game.
Like, people in our town keep on getting murdered every time a monster rolls out. Well, here's what it is, I don't want to lose.
I'm not going to stop my addiction just because of some other people's lives.
I'm finally a level 14 sage. I can't give that up now. But then and then like there's like a part that like one of the more real parts of it where I want to say Kay is about to shoot a lady because like her baby was killed by a because they're going around like there's all this debris, all this destruction from this demon running around murdering things, and they're doing the neuralizer thing they do in the movie, and he's saying this was a tornado. They get to this lady and she's just like sitting there in shock, like looking like she's just like, the monster ate my baby. My baby was right there and it ran off and ate it, and then you're like, oh Jesus, okay. He says like, it was a tornado, and like Kay like, well, first off, Kay was gonna kill her, and then Jay's like, wait, hold on, man, hold on, that's not cool. Which I in all honesty, I get that. Yeah. But then he says like, no. He's like, we can't do that way. We got to be more humane. I'm like, all right, do what you want to do it your way. And he's like, it was a tornado, and then she's like, my baby. She starts like throwing through the rubble, trying to find like her baby, which isn't there. Yeah. So it's one of those things where like he's like, oh, maybe the old man was right.
Well, that's also what always happens. He's like, see, I told you, like the harsh way was what we had to do. Like now you just made her even more paranoid. She's never gonna find that baby, Jay. Look at you fucking ass.
I do like the thing they kind of present. It's the thing they kind of bring around in the movie, but they also kind of elaborate on it because they say in this comic, most science fiction things are like most science fiction movies or video games or whatever or TV shows are all kind of like things to prepare us for like when people interact with an alien, that they have an idea of how to interact or how this is going to go, or how like if there is something they can't cover up that's too massive to cover up, people are at least aware of like of like the archetype or the character. Like they said, like, at some point they're like the last issue or second to last issue, they're going against like a big destructive robot creature that's coming to kill we'll explain the reason why later, but he's coming to kill Jay. And Kay says, all right, you ever see the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still? It's like, yeah. The robot in the movie? Yeah. That's who this guy is. only bigger and meaner. So it's kind of like things like that. Or like you say, Space Invaders was actually an intergalactic battle we had with space insects to keep them away from Earth. And this was just people don't know about it, but that's just just that kind of thing they would do. So if people did find out, or like they would be more prepared if this thing ever got out.
Yeah, no, that stuff's really cool. I think just those little tie-ins, just to like, hey, that all this stuff is all in a sense propaganda / we're sort of allowing people in, but they think that they're just watching, a fun media presentation of it, but that's not true. It's actually like based on real stuff, or it is like a documentary almost, or something like that.
Yeah, they made a couple of other examples, but like at some point they go to a convention and they're like, like it's implied that some of the things at the convention might be actual alien. Like they go to like a sci-fi convention, it's implied that some of the creatures there are actual like aliens and monsters, which is something that seems like that would be in the movie. And then there's even a part where there's like a nerd holding like, oh, it's the Men in Black comics, it's the Men in Black comics. Like, how does he know? He's like, well, it's okay. We don't want him to know, but it's okay if he knows. Just look at him. It just shows like the most dorkiest. It looks like Mandark, and he's like, who's gonna want to believe that guy?
I just love it. Whenever I see that kind of stuff, it's just like that. That's just like written, and they'd be like, God, there's just these fucks at the Comic Cons when I have to go there and sell it to them. Like, you know what? I want to be a football star, but you know what? Next thing you know, I'm writing comics, and I have to deal with these fuckers. So I'm gonna put them in there.
I just like to imagine, I have no idea what the author or the artist looks like, but I just imagine he's like this guy, these massive biceps just drawn, like, hate my fucking job. And because you think people who like get into comics, it was like a passion, but they're just like, it's not, it's just the thing he landed in, like fucking wanted to go in stocks.
Well, it's like
real estate.
And then the artist, I almost am thinking it was a girl because her name's Sandy Caruthers or something like that. I mean, Sandy, I guess, could be a man's name in the 90s, but could be. So, but like, because it's like one of those ones, like that's kind of like one that's just like an interesting one there because it's got that cool black and white. Really, the artwork reminds me a lot, kind of in that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle style. Without the duotone shading, just if it's straight black and white, like it has that kind of feel. I mean, that's literally where these comics were probably coming off of, was Ninja Turtles and Tank Girl and that kind of black and white, somewhat indie era of comic book making.
There's kind of that period of like, I can't think of that many examples. I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original comics, is the best example. But there was that early point where it was like comics for, this is going to sound so stupid, but comics for people who really like comics. And what I mean by that is because when you like Batman or Daredevil or Superman or whatever, it's continuing a story about those characters. Maybe at some point it gets meta contextualized and whatnot, but there is that point in like the late 80s, early 90s where they were doing their own version of kind of like, all right, yeah, this is kind of like a hodgepodge and it's a lot more like winking and nodding to like the to the reader rather than being like little like authors don't, hello, true believer, but like something more of like, no, this is like, we're going to try to explain comics logic. And though we may take ourselves seriously at some point, there's going to be a little bit of tongue-in-cheekness to it.
Yeah. No, that's definitely kind of how it is. It's like, it's really like making it for the hardest core fans of hardcore fans. Like that's the one, because it's the era when comic book stores finally started up here. So, you're buying books beyond just like the spinner rack at like Save Mart and whatnot.
There's also, because another example is because there's also the other issue where they fight against, I forget what the guy's name is, but there's an issue where they go against a superhero who is basically a combination of like Wolverine, Daredevil, maybe a little bit of Batman. And,
a little bit like Freakazoid too.
Yeah, I think that was coincidental, but yeah. Like it opens up almost like it's that guy's comic, and really the minimum that was probably one of my favorite issues actually. And the Men in Black are kind of the bad guys that are bringing him in, because really at the end of the day, he's just doing the same thing the Men in Black are doing, but he's stopping. He's not really even doing what they do. He's stopping crime, but they come in like, No, this guy is stepping on our turf. He's bringing too much attention to himself, and we don't fucking need that. This is what happens when one of these assholes goes rogue. So it's even kind of like the earlier foundations of something like The Boys.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's just got like well, that's the thing that's interesting about this book, and it says it in one of the little like behind the scenes thing or whatever, where Lowell, I think, is kind of explaining. He's like, I didn't want to do multiple sci-fi issues in a row because I wanted this series to feel like it like had a wide breach of different stories you could kind of tell. He said that like if I did UFO stories twice in a row, everyone's going to think that that's the only thing this thing's about. Lo and behold, the movies go, sure, UFO stories, because that's the only thing. Is like it's funny, like in these, like especially in these original 6 issues, there's only like I think it's like issue 2 is really about the only one that like it pulls a whole lot from to go into the movie. Like everything else is kind of like, you know, beyond just the 2 main characters, and let's be honest, Jay just as a name. The rest of it's kind of like it's almost like a completely different brand new stories, like in a sense. So it's not like it's not like the Ninja Turtles one that we read the other time where like, you know, that first like issue is pretty much like very similar to the movie, you know.
This is kind of like the 2nd issue and the 6th issue, probably because it's alien type shit.
Yeah.
And even like the 2nd issue, when they get to that, because that's where they bump into like bugs from space that and interact with a farmer. And I'm like, oh, it's a comic, so it's going to be more fucked up and more violent. I'm like, oh, no, this is way more tamer. It's almost kind of more of a joke, but at the same time, it was just kind of like, is what happened. It was kind of funny because it was like, I guess. I was kind of for a minute disappointed, but thinking back on it, like, actually, I think it's kind of funny because I was disappointed because I like the movie, and I was like, oh, dude, the movie was so much harder. But this was like, you know, a bug lands in a dude's yard. He goes out there like, you ain't taking Virgil Sturgis's gun out of his cold dead hands. Like, we'll be back tomorrow. And then he's just like, oh, we're scared. Some aliens are going to come down and take my gun and try to kill me, but I can't face them. Like, all right, don't worry. About this, and they come down like, okay, like, what do you want? They think they're about to go to war with the aliens. The aliens are like, is the old guy dead yet? Like, no. All right, we're back tomorrow. Like, you're not gonna kill him? No, he says we can have his gun when he's dead, so we're just gonna keep coming back every day until he's dead. But all right, you know, so I thought that was like a funny twist right there.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think it was like he took it for like totally at face value. Like, okay, Second Amendment, okay, I understand. We'll be back every single day until you're dead. Just to go annoying that'd be if like every day be like, oh, it's fucking 9 o'clock. I gotta go outside and tell the aliens I'm not dead yet. Can't go on vacation, God forbid. I gotta be home every single day at 9 o'clock to tell these aliens that I'm not dead yet.
That guy is not the kind of guy who wants to go on vacations. I can imagine that guy in an airport.
No, I can't either. He'd be like, what do you mean I can't take my gun on board? What, you don't got gun racks on this thing?
I do. Yeah. Well, Virgil Sturgis is not going to let go of his gun. He had to pry from his cold dead hands. Yeah, we know. We all like.
Well, what if Saddam Hussein's on this plane? What are you going to do about it? Saddam Hussein's not going to be on the plane. Well, of course he's going to be. I've seen it on the news.
You know he's not going to fly economy. I'm just going to tell you that right now. What was the other one? There's actually another one that stood out to me where I'm going to go back and do a little comparison for a second. Every so often you hear people say, dude, the comics are so much more darker and they're so much more violent. And it's kind of like this, like people said about the Ninja Turtles one, like they're darker, but
like
not
slightly.
Not by if you're comparing a Saturday morning cartoon, yes, it's a lot darker. But if you're comparing it to like any average Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie that comes out, no, it's not that much darker.
It's literally like it's the equivalent of maybe like if one was PG, maybe you add a 13 to it, like that. And that's like pushing it. I would say it's like hard PG, maybe, like realistically.
Yeah, and this one right here, they grit their teeth a lot more and they look more angry. But at the end of the day, it's not that much more violent. Where this one, it's kind of the same thing. I think there are some moments where there's like some heavier implied violence, and there's like, you know, like the first issue, because the way Jay actually, we didn't even say this, the way Jay gets involved is he is undercover. Is like he's undercover agent or officer trying to bring down like a cartel that is wrapped up into some like occult shit. And there's like at some point like a line of dead bodies that are like were apparently eaten or busted open or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of just see sort of a silhouette. And that's about probably as much brutal or as dark as it gets. Beyond that, it stays pretty PG-13.
Yeah, no. It definitely. Well, it's that one that like I don't know. Sometimes it's like you think about it. Maybe that just comes from the old. That's like the old '90s thing where like before you really had the knowledge to go out and look for stuff. You know, jerk off Johnny at school could tell you the tall tales of like what he just read and like whatever book it is, and telling you about the the Mew that you can get by pushing the truck and Pokemon and all that kind of stuff. I feel like it all falls from like that kind of era where people just like I felt like they're like those ones that like okay, I read the book. I was expected to be more intense than it is, and it wasn't really. But when I go to school, I'm going to make it feel like it was so intense, and it was so insane. And they're going to think I'm the coolest kid in the world.
25 kids are going to come running up to me with big eyes, like, Johnny, tell us the tales of like the Japanese version of Pokemon. Like, gather around, my pupils. Let me inform you of how in the movie, the Japanese version, which my cousin who works at Nintendo, my dad who works at Nintendo downloaded, but it was like he could only watch it once, so I don't have proof to show it.
It was just like Mission Impossible. When you're done watching it, it literally burns out.
Yeah, Nintendo's that classified. That when Ash runs between Mewtwo and Mew, his head blows off. What? I know, it's fucking crazy.
And then there's this 20-minute shower scene of Misty. Like, you're not going to believe it. Like, I can't believe they even cut that out.
The reason I think we always bring that one up is because I heard multiple people say that. Like, I don't know what this is. I'm wondering if there's some, because years later you'd find out, oh, there was actually like a bootleg porn or whatever that came out of it or something. So like, it's one of those things, like, I'm not saying that, but you hear things similar to that. So I'm kind of wondering like, where'd that one stem from? Because I've heard that from like 2 or 3 people and they did not go to the same school.
Well, what I think that also stems from is that because there's that Japanese card, that Pokemon card, where it's like Misty's whatever, and she's holding Staryu and she's naked or whatever. Yeah. Like, and I think that's where that almost like stems from, is that picture. Someone probably found that online and then ran a tall tale with it. Like that's a lot of times what I always think.
Yeah, it's always some.
But I feel like that's sort of the same thing with comic books and so on like that. And people make them out like they're like these like super rated R things, which I'll say like novels, on the other hand, sometimes can be. You'll watch like a PG-13 movie and then you go to read the novel and it's a rated R version. Like Jurassic Park's, I mean, it's not like it's like hardcore rated R, but it's like if that was made like as the book was, it would be a straight up rated R movie. It has language in it. It has a lot more violence, that kind of stuff.
That kind of leads me around to something I was going to say earlier, because about Men in Black, not just as a comic, but as just an overall franchise. And this day where they're trying to reboot and remake everything, I don't think everything needs a reboot. Not everything needs a remake. But if you absolutely had to, I mean, absolutely had to make another edition to Men in Black, I think it's at that point where people aren't really clamoring for it as much as they once were. Mm-hmm. I don't think, our generation grew up on the movie and all that. I don't know what Zoomers think of it, but like, it's one of those things where I don't really know how much people are dying for another Men in Black. So if you were to do it, I would say, okay, you know what? I mean, I'm not going to say do it beat for beat, because Jay's a total bitch in the comics. Where he's not Will Smith. He's definitely not Will Smith. So
no,
it's I cannot imagine this Jay leading 2 different music videos. Okay, so he's like, "Welcome to Men in Black." He's like stumbling his words and like he can't keep up with the rest.
The Men in Black. Come on, Jay, get it over with. Kay's just sitting there smoking a cigarette. If you don't do the song, people are gonna think this shit's real. The song makes it feel like they just watched a fun-filled, romp of a movie. Their popcorn was enjoyed and the soda was drank.
Yeah. Now do it. Throws a cigarette at him.
Oh, my eye! You got another one. You'll be good. At least the eye patch will actually make you look slightly manly. Slightly.
I'll be sad if you see like a bitch, like a little bitch with an eye patch. See a guy with an eye patch. Like, that dude must have been some shit. Like, no, not my other eye. Please, not my other eye. Like, oh god, fuck.
No, he just ran into a door like when it was dark. Doorknob got him.
like clipped a toenail, just like stabbed him.
I took it out.
Yeah. No, I think if you were to do if you absolutely had to do another version of Men in Black, I say don't do like another let's make it strictly aliens. Do a more fine-tuned version of this. Like I think you can take a little bit of both worlds. Like the level of thought that went into the very first Men in Black movie and all the reasoning, but then expand upon that. Because the way this goes, I mean, we know there's other agents, but they play it off as like it's just these two guys. Well, where are they at? They're at the building. Well, what's the building? I don't fucking know. Well, where's everything? You know, they don't really kind of they don't really explain it as much. The movie's a lot more thorough with everything. So I think you don't need to explain everything, but I think that if you were to do some kind of reboot, I would try to more do it like adapt the comic.
Yeah, well, I just think the key thing would be to do is to I think do a mixed match of both of them, but I think is keep like the sci-fi is just like 1/5 of like the stuff they're gonna run into. I think that's almost what makes the comic really interesting is that you do have that feeling like you don't really know what they're gonna run into next. You know, maybe it's aliens, maybe it's a werewolf type thing, maybe it's a superhero thing, maybe they're gonna
bullshit.
Yeah, you get this occult stuff and so on like that. And I feel like that would be what kind of, makes it kind of interesting and so on. It's just having that. And not saying that, I mean, I know you could run with sci-fi for quite a while. Like realistically, they could have made 3 more Men in Black movies and still kept it in the sci-fi realm. And I feel like that could have worked. I mean, you could have almost even Green Lanterned it and had them go into space at some point. I feel like that wouldn't be too out of the question with the movies.
I don't remember the cartoon that well, but I remember as a kid, like the cartoon almost took itself more seriously than the movie. Like there was less laughs in the cartoon than there was in the movie.
Well, it's funny how so especially in those 90s, like so many of those cartoons, how much more serious they are than other stuff. Like I've been watching the Real Adventures of Johnny Quest again, and it's like, dude, that show, like people died left and right in that show, and nobody like bats an eye. Like it's just so normal. Like I just feel like that's one of those ones. Like, gosh, in the last 20 years, you probably could not get away with that much like violence in a show.
Well, I remember that was also that point where it's a little dicey on like. I still don't hear it in like kids shows where there's something where like Ray Spannon woke up from like a coma or something. They looked around. It's like, let me tell you, I feel like I just got back from hell. And like, they said hell in in Cartoon Network. They said hell,
That's why I got that Y7.
Yeah. They're not fucking around. Like that's like where they like the two like, sit two like network programmers at Cartoon Network just look at each other. They put 2 keys in on the other side of the room, just give each other the nod.
Yeah, just kind of that. But even that Men in Black show, like when reading this, I was kind of thinking, I'm like, man, you know what? I remember seeing a couple episodes, and I couldn't tell you too much about it, but I wouldn't mind going back and watching it because kind of the upside of generally the majority of things from the 90s is like cartoon shows. It's felt like the bar was raised so like high by Batman that everything else had to kind of compete with that. So it's like there's not really like like the worst show in the 90s is still a pretty strong show. You know what I mean? Comparative. It's not like the 70s and 80s where like that bar was real fucking low.
Yeah. Well, like at the end of the day, nearly every kid's cartoon is trying to sell like an action figure. However, there was that point since Batman the Animated Series, the bar was raised really high. And I mean, maybe, I don't know. I remember I watched the Men in Black cartoon. I remember I liked it, but I don't remember it super well. But I remember it being darker, and I remember characters dying off and getting killed at times. They're usually aliens because they're not people. Fuck them, right?
Yeah,
but
they don't have a soul.
Exactly. But then
I didn't see him there at church on Sunday. Yeah, fuck him.
I didn't see him at the mosque.
Yeah.
My fucking problem. But yeah, it was one of those things where what was I gonna say? Yeah, like it was that one. It was a couple that kind of like fit this similar template. It was like Men in Black. There's that Godzilla cartoon. There was a very similar style. May have even been the same studio. I don't know. And then there's one where it was like it's the dumbest name, but it was actually a good show. I remember. At least I remember it being a good show. And that was Ghostbusters Extreme. And that's where they're like it's the edgier Ghostbusters, it's the next generation, which a lot of times like that sounds like bullshit. But I remember the characters were actually good, and it was actually it was a Ghostbusters show that had more of an emphasis on horror than it did laughs.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that comes, it's that late 90s period where they started having, like, where the shows were still all pretty darn solid. And they were going with, everything was a little bit extreme and, over the top. And they it was 90s to the max in like that late 90s, 2000s era. But like a lot of those shows just all delivered pretty darn well. Like, it's like X-Men Evolution, like, great show. Yeah. The Ninja Turtles, the TMNT one, the second one that we've talked about before, amazing. There's just so many of those ones that from that kind of time period that they were just great. It's just like that. I feel like that, I always call it, that's sort of like the second golden age of animation is probably, you'd say, like very, very late 80s to about mid 2000s or so, give or take.
Yeah, I remember a lot of characters. They're very squarish, but still kind of like jagged edges, sort of.
Yeah.
But still kind of like darker tone colors, kind of like the Batman, but the Batman seemed just slightly more cartoonier. But I guess that was leading into that,
Yeah, because the Batman, I feel like those are almost the shows where it's
the Ben 10 kind of vibe.
Yeah, you start to see sort of a change from like the more Attitude Era cartoons to where it's going back into being a little bit more kid, friendly and so on like that. It's not saying it's a bad thing because the Batman still can be enjoyable, just like how Brave and the Bold's fun in different ways. But that you could tell that like by about 2005 and up, the shows start kind of fading back into a little bit more softer, like let's take the guns out of the bad guys' hands, that kind of, put some walkie-talkies there.
Yeah. Well, going back to this for a second, I feel like there is like a lot more death in this, maybe about as much as the movie, thinking back on it, but I mean, kids die, though you don't see it. Mm-hmm. Though there is the one where, and this is once again one of those interesting moments that you could have really developed Jay more as a character, but they chose not to. And that's where like we get a little bit of flashback, but it's more alluded to, but it's obvious, there's like a crow man. There's like a man that I don't remember his name, but there's like a raven like humanoid thing attacking people, and I believe it's Kentucky. And it just kind of like, stay away from the house, and like some like little like kid, like farmer kids, like, I want to run up to the house. Yes, you wait and say. And then all of a sudden, like a big ass like crow monster comes down, like, oh God, and like that took Billy, and then later they're driving there to see to see what the job is. They walk in on a guy and like he's beating the shit out of the guy. Some guy's beating the shit out of his kid. Like, this kid's telling lies, like, let me get my sodomy stick, So it's like beating him with a stick or some shit.
Oh no, so, Paul, no,
not the sodomy stick.
It's the only way you'll learn, boy.
And then that's when like Jay's like, hey man, stop it. That's not nice. He just beats the fuck out.
It's 1992, don't you know?
Yeah. I don't like you folks with your big $100 suits. Just like fucking smacks him in the side of the face. And that's when like fucking Tommy Lee Jones like, oh, I got this. All right. Typical, right? And then we kind of learned that like, yeah, I remember I was out here, like Jay, he's like, I remember I was out here as a kid one time, and I was like, I remember it being like, I got attacked by like a bird, and then I started having nightmares about a giant raven man attacking me. And Kay's like, yeah. He's like, wait, was I neuralized? Like, I ain't saying nothing. Like, oh, I was neuralized, wasn't I? Like, how the fuck did this guy become a deep cover agent?
Well, it's one of those, it's like I feel like Kay's like, that's why you're supposed to wear your sunglasses, you fucking idiot. Yeah. That's why they issue them to you. Like, I don't know why you don't put them on. Like, I thought about that too the whole time. I was like, why is he never wearing the sunglasses? Like,
no, but he was neuralized as a kid.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That was the thing. It was implying that as a kid he was like, and so, but yeah, he never. I guess just to distinguish the two, because it is black and white. I still feel like I could tell the difference between them, just the way their hair and just the posture, But
yeah, I also like because the guy that beats his son, like when that guy finally breaks down, he goes, "Well, I was just beating him because when I was a boy, I saw a crow man, and I know it's real, but I want to beat it out of him so that he doesn't think it's real because if you beat a kid, then it makes everything right." That's what old Grandpappy told me. He said that was his favorite hobby. On his deathbed, he said, come over here and give me my beating stick. Because if I'm going into like hell, I want to know that I was beating you all the way there. And I was like, Grandpappy, I'm 36. I don't know if I need to be beaten in front of the nurses and doctors. He's like, no, you pull down your pants, boy. I'm going to beat the shit out of you before I die.
Just wheeling on over.
Give me some adrenaline real quick. I need my strength back.
He's like, he's like, oh, you get down those stairs. You get down those stairs.
Don't you can't roll down those stairs.
He's just like adrenaline. He starts just doing like, oh, just starts climbing up the stairs. Colostomy bag spills out, just like going.
He picks the bag up and chucks it like a grenade at him.
Like wraps his leg with the IV and just like starts beating them right there. Those are his final moments. He just has the biggest grin in his face, covered in his own shit and piss.
Backwards, like a big like Joker looking smile on his face.
Covered in his own shit and piss, just laying there smiling. It was a good laugh after all.
Cuts back to J and K just standing there like serious face. So did you see the Crow Man or not?
Oh yeah, like back in 72.
Yes. Yeah, no, but oh. Yeah, that's just the interesting thing is each one of these issues does have something completely different. You don't know what you're going to get involved into.
Yeah, it's also and then like the thing is when he goes to face off against the Crow Man, he's like, that's it. I'm going to go face the they walk in there. There's an old man who's like obviously the Crow Man, or at least some part of the Crow Man. He's like, I don't like cops. He's just all like slobbering and just all creepy. He's like, we've dealt with aliens, we've dealt with demons, we dealt with occults. This guy's in on some shit. We know it. And it's just like, Kay's like, all right, let's just fucking end this. And like Jay's like, no, like, okay, go on. let's get this stuff with this. It'll be fun. He goes up the stairs, and then that's where like upstairs we don't see it, but it's implied there's be a bunch of dead bodies and it smells like death. And then he's attacked by the Crow Man. And we realize the Crow Man is an extension of the old man downstairs. The old man controls it. And the Crow Man is just like strangling Kay or Jay. Mm-hmm. And then Kay just eventually just caps off the old man. He's just like, you killed an old man. Like, I'm not even going to explain it, dude. You should know by now.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't you see because I always want to say it says like there's like 56 like bodies or something up there that they like see, or some high number, and be like, and of course Jay's like, I think they're still good at him.
Fucking income's like, I just like the idea of like, here's like this, very like, it's just funny, just the dynamic of just being kind of like, hey man, I know I'm like an undercover cop and I think that we could really figure this out. And here comes like Kay running over a homeless guy, gets out. He has like, a Dole 92 bumper sticker or something like that.
Well, because it is definitely like Jay is 100% playing off like that 90s PC culture, like the proto version of like what we have today, but like that 90s version that you'll catch every once in a while in certain movies. Like he's just that guy, like, what? Like, I was part of the Burger King Kids Club. I was one of the kids on that team. And I think, if we all band together, we could change the world, man.
I know, because I ate burgers with two of my friends. One was a black guy, one was a kid in a wheelchair, and I think I'm really open-minded.
The kid in the wheelchair now has diabetes from all that Coca-Cola, but it was a great funeral. Believe me, we had a party. We made sure we poured some more Coca-Cola in his grave. That's what he would have wanted.
The kid with the visor glasses, well, he got involved in crypto.
Yeah, exactly. He was literally in on it, and now he drinks Pepsi, so we don't talk to him anymore. Sorry, it's who our sponsors say that who we can and can't talk to.
Follow us. Well, even like I just like to mention, he went into he was like there for like the first 3 days for like, Jay, take a knee. Come on, come over here.
Wheelchair
kid, you don't got to take a knee. Don't worry. We appreciate the effort, but no, you can stay right where you're at.
sometimes you'd come to work and you'd see Mr. King, and he would just be staring out the window with that like far away glance, looking at that Taco Bell, and he's just so angry at that Pepsi machine there. I never really figured it out, but I thought it was best to never drink a Mountain Dew in front of him.
It's like the last shot of Michael in Godfather 2, just looking out the window as Fredo gets shot. Just see like Burger King, you see like a Taco Bell thing crumble in the like reflection of the window.
Well, the Burger King kids are like, I thought Uncle Fredo was gonna go fishing with me today. Not anymore. Not anymore, he's not. Your Uncle Fredo's got a long ways away.
Well, he's fishing, but with the fishes. Oh, I see. It came out wrong. You get the idea. Fucking, who am I trying to fucking impress? You're getting kicked out of the Burger King kids, man. Get the fuck out.
Well, then also speaking of Men in Black, back to that. Then there's that mysterious Far Cry comic that comes kind of later in the thing.
Yeah, that confused me.
It's the first one that's colored, and it doesn't have the original artist or any of the other team other than Lowell Cunningham on there. So he literally jumped ship with that team. God, they probably got buried at the Malibu ship. God, who knows what happened? He jumped off at the last second when Marvel's like, throwing out like a life preserver and being like the Titanic, being like, hey, we only got so many boats here. Not all you can come.
We're about to get bought by, I think, Ike Perlmutter at this point. Maybe it was Avi Irad, I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah.
KB Toys is about to buy us. Who's KB Toys? I don't know. Some company like that. Like maybe not KB Toys, but it's some toy company.
Something like that.
Yeah. So it was this one. I'm not gonna lie. I was kind of in a rush to finish it for the podcast in time, and then through doing that, I don't remember it entirely. But that one was a little confusing because part of me thinks like it looks like it's like retelling the story, but it also looks like it's retelling the first story, and then another part of it looks like it's continuing. But either way, it's interesting because the way it ends is Jay is getting replaced by this new guy who was initially their target, but this guy has experience with aliens and he's quick on his feet and he knows what he's doing. And you're like, you know what, you're good. You should come work for us. And then he gets brought. At least that's how I remember it. And then they even say, like, yeah, due to the stress and this guy being a bitch, that agent is inactive. So, and then like even like Kay, he's not like, that's my partner. He's like, yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be like having some new blood with some fucking balls.
You know what I kind of wonder? I didn't think about this till now, but I wonder if that was like, okay, Marvel's got a hold of this. They got the movie coming out. This comic literally is predating the movie. Like it's trying to get you pumped for the movie coming out soon. I wonder if they're trying to be like, you know what? Let's kill this Jay off because kids are going to be confused if it's not Will Smith Jay. So if we get rid of this Jay, and we'll just work in another character for a moment, and then we can work the Will Smith version of Jay in. I wonder if that's almost like if it was one of those weird lead-in things.
If the guy was black, that'd make more sense to me. And maybe it was something to the effect of.
Well, I'm thinking that guy's the in-between character. That guy there. He's not Will Smith yet because I feel like let another guy take a name and then they'll reuse the Jay name later down the line.
Well, it's interesting because this Far Cry issue, because there's another one because you sent me a link to Internet Archives, and that's how I read this. And there is like an adaptation from the comic, and I didn't really read. Adaptation of the movie, which okay, this must be where it stops. Maybe there's some stuff after that. But the Far Cry comic, I got the impression that because the adaptation to the movie is also Marvel.
Yeah.
This kind of goes back to something we were talking earlier in the podcast. I got the impression that like we're doing, because it's called issue 1, and it's kind of a continuation of the pre-existing series, but now we are just sort of doing like a soft reboot, kind of like we're not erasing history, but we're just moving forward in a new direction, but continuing the story. And it almost seems kind of like it's trying to do something where maybe it's trying to introduce the Men in Black to the Marvel universe. And then out of that, like, that kind of makes me wonder, like, if they're trying to make them characters within Marvel, but then by the time the movie came out, some rights shit fell through, like, I'll scrap that.
Yeah, maybe that's kind of what it sort of was. I'm actually just flipping through the adaptation one really quickly just to see if there is something ridiculous in there that changes it up or anything that kind of connects it. So far, I will say the adaptation one has really good artwork in it, though. It's like one of those ones like they spared no expense on that book. But that's still that time period where like the reason why those adaptations were such a big deal at one point was you go to see the movie in theaters. Well, you're not going to get this film on VHS or Laserdisc for like almost like 12 months, maybe sometimes even longer. So these adaptations, whether it be novels and or comic books, that was like almost like your way to rewatch the movie while you're waiting for it to come out on VHS.
Yeah, that's a good point. And they would always.
I was gonna say the issue ends at 49 pages, and then the second half looks like it's a brand new story. But it's Tommy Lee and Will Smith, and it's still written by Lowell Cunningham. Gosh. It's weird one too. Is I almost went to read that, but then I was like, okay, like I guess we'll just stick with the original ones there and just there. But like that's actually kind of cool. So it's almost supposed to be like an in between story between Men in Black 1 and 2, probably. I mean, before they even probably had an idea too.
That's interesting. Oh, I might have to check that one out now.
Yeah, I think I'll probably definitely have to read that one. But read that later. I bet you the show's probably on YouTube. I bet you if you look for it, I bet you that cartoon show might be on there because I find a lot of shows where people have them all uploaded on YouTube. Like when we were talking Ninja Turtles, I literally found TMNT. Someone uploaded all the episodes of TMNT onto YouTube so you could watch it on there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, yeah, I'll have to look into that. That's interesting though that Laurel Cunningham actually continued to write it. They brought him back to finish it up, but that just got me kind of thinking for a minute because clearly some rights shit fell through or whatever, or they were selling things off, right? Maybe I don't know how it all worked, but I'm kind of wondering like if they even stopped and looked at it, like okay, so we got the Men in Black. Would they like butt heads with Shield? Would they go after like? Would they be like pissing off or bumping shoulders, like trying to like keep the X-Men in line? What would they be doing?
Yeah, I do kind of wonder if they did have this idea, like maybe we can combine them in there. They'll be kind of like in that Blade universe and so on like that. And then they'll at some point crisscross with everybody else, And I don't know if that they just, they just did. Well, Marvel still, back in those days, in the last like 90s into like 70s, they did always have those other series that had nothing really to generally crossovers, maybe unless it was a special, but, the Conan comics, the Star Wars comics, a handful of all those other ones that are like, they're not like Marvel, but they have other, things kind of going on and it's under the Marvel banner. Maybe that's still trying to fit in that kind of section of books.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's doing that. Yeah. Well, because sometimes you do that thing where I don't remember the name of it, but Kick-Ass at a time was technically a Marvel book, but it wasn't within the Marvel universe. It was owned by a company. It was a company that was owned by Marvel, and that was something for Marvel writers, kind of like their version of Vertigo for like DC. Okay. And then Vertigo was still usually within the Marvel universe, but it was just very rare if Vertigo characters interacted with DC characters, And then, so it was something kind of like that. But I'm not sure what happened to that company, or if, I think Mark Miller eventually got his rights to all his characters or something to that effect.
Yeah, that might have been kind of it there too.
I know that's probably not the same company. That's not the same company that did Malibu. I'm just saying maybe it was something kind of like that.
Yeah. Well, even the interesting thing about the Malibu is like it's almost like there's also another company inside of this one. There's like I think it's like the Aerosol or whatever comics, because that's like the Men in Black. It almost seems like Men in Black is like its own label, and then like maybe Malibu's doing the distribution of it. Like so, Men in Black might be partially almost even like an independent comic that just has a distributor of Malibu, and it's like that kind of thing. Like maybe it's not done as in-house, because all these ones here, it's like the upcoming projects from Aircell Comics or whatever you want to call that.
Just to clarify, I just want to make sure I didn't say the wrong thing. I said Kick-Ass, right, when I was talking about Mark Miller?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure I didn't say like Sandman. Like, oh really? What? Just I don't know. Sometimes just like, wait, did I say the right thing? Shit.
Yeah, you're like, wait, what?
Did I say it out loud? Am I saying this out loud?
Did Kay come by and phase me real quick?
Exactly.
What just happened, you know? Well, even like in some of these ones too, because there's that one too where like it has that mysterious like ending. I can't remember if it's one of the black and white ones where like it's almost like Jay. I think it's the one where like the aliens come to like they're like, "Yo, you remember when you gave that
Oh, right.
that you gave fucking Zorak that handgun, you know?" And now all shit's went loose, and he went on a shooting spree. I know it's only a 6-shooter, but you'd be amazed at how much bullets like those guys can make out of those things.
Really good shots.
Yeah, so we came to the sci-fi convention to put you on trial, because one of those ones. But don't they like? Doesn't something happen to Jay literally, and then like he comes out of that tube later at the very end of the issue?
I don't remember shit, and I read it today too. I finished reading it today, so I really don't remember. I know there was something where they teleported by getting into coffins, and they showed like some like some stretchy like body horror shit of like them getting to like teleporting somewhere. Where in the second movie, he's like, it's a toilet.
Yeah. Well, that's like one of the few ones too where it's like, oh yeah, they pulled that for the movie. Like it's kind of funny. There's just like these little tidbits throughout these issues. It's like, okay, that kind of goes there and so on. But it's actually kind of one of those ones where it's sort of amazing. Like the movie still like runs in like the similar path as Men in Black, but it's also kind of different. It makes me wonder if there's people that just like, oh, I went and saw the movie. It's just so different. Like there was no like superhero man in there. There was no occultist. Like, that there had been that one guy. I'm not going to say there's probably not that many of them. There's probably all like 10 of them that were really disappointed that this thing was like not the same.
There had to be like a few of those guys, but then there had to be a lot more people, because that was the point where you're just happy a comic book movie was coming out. Yeah. So, and a lot of people didn't even know Men in Black was based on a comic. So the people who really liked Men in Black, they're probably just happy that something was coming out. Maybe it wasn't their preferred thing. Yeah. But like, I mean, I think this was a really indie comic. I think one of the things when you could tell it's a really indie comic is when it's black and white and they came out like 6 or 7 issues. So it's also something to the effect of like, this is very much that like indie, like early 90s, late 80s indie vibe, the black and white comic, the very kind of sort of like self-awareness of like the genre it's in, not to the point of like, oh yeah, it's superheroes, so we're talking to deal with superhero shit. I mean more to the degree of like pointing out the odd things about this genre, or like mixing and matching and things that trying to come up with the answers to that type of stuff. So it's something kind of like I mean, now I feel like we see a lot of that kind of meta commentary, like in genre. But then I think it was when we were seeing it a lot for the first time in this kind of stuff.
Well, and it's also the Men in Black one's definitely not like Ninja Turtles. It was already like before Ninja Turtles even became like a cartoon show. There was already like toys in store and so on like that. Like that kind of like that thing was already sort of a brand, and then the cartoon show add to it, made it a phenomenon. And then the movie's almost like was like the pinnacle of that kind of era, like capping it off. Where like the Men in Black one just comes out of nowhere in a sense, movie wise. It's not like it's not even probably it's like Tank Girl still had quite a bit of issues, at least by the time that movie came out.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess we already talked about them earlier, but I guess movies like I never read it, but there's like Tank Girl, Ninja Turtles, which I did read. Bulletproof Monk.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one too.
There's like a lot of movies that come out. You're like, oh, that's based like two. Like this isn't the same time, it's an Image comic, but Two Guns, that's based on a comic. Road to Perdition's based on a comic. Just those comics that you wouldn't assume that to be based on.
Yeah, exactly. Like those ones. It's like, yeah, there's those kind of hidden gem comic book movies, and so on, and just like this falls into that kind of series there.
This one actually took off.
I was looking up at this because I just wanted to see like if there was any like we have this here, and I'm assuming that this guy put it together with all these issues there, and it's correct. There's only 6 issues for the original run, so those 6 black and white issues is what that movie just kind of took the rights of and ran with.
No, it only took one of them for the most part, really.
Yeah, it really only took one of them. I felt like somebody just picked up one issue off like a coffee table, didn't even look at what the number was, and just said, I got this.
Well, it also like they got to the thing where Jay was like the movie. He was like a beat cop, or maybe he was a detective. I don't remember, but he was a cop. chasing someone down and who had an encounter with an alien, and Tommy Lee Jones liked him and wanted him to go for it. Where he was an undercover cop. He was like I'm not CIA, but I think just a like a narc or something like that. And then Kay blew his cover and then pulled him into his job, which is another interesting way to do it. That's just where it stops, because from there on in, he's tripping up throughout that first issue. Like, it's his first time, he'll get it. Like,
yeah, no,
he doesn't.
No, he won't. Yeah, as I think that's almost like the biggest like change that like is like, yeah, Will Smith really adds to that whole character dynamic. And just really making it feel like a character and not just like, just imagine Will Smith just like pretty much like tripping over his own dick the whole movie and just never get anything right. And Tommy Lee Jones being like, oh, you're fucking up again, I see. That's okay. How about you go upstairs first? I'll just wait down here and smoke a cigarette. Let me know what's up there.
Well, it's also something to the effect of like he's, what's the word I'm looking for? He's like, he still has some of the rookie mistakes, but it doesn't come from like, it is brash, because this Jay is brash, but he doesn't learn. He's brash, but he has no street credit, and he has no swagger, and he has no like seemingly skill, where say, the Will Smith one has all that, and he also at the same time still fucks up, and he's the butt of like probably majority of the jokes, but he's also more or less the main character, and he's the one that goes through the most transformation throughout the movie, and he's even able to get a few jokes in, like Tommy Lee Jones, just for being kind of like grumpy or old,
Yeah, exactly. And once again, Tommy Lee Jones, like he is like, like I feel like that's such a perfect casting right there for Kay from the comic and everything like that. I mean, the comic book version is probably just even more like
he's more like Duke Nukem.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of it. He just feels like a sort of older Duke Nukem, kind of like if you gave Judge Dredd a sense of humor, that's almost the other way he sort of feels, instead of just being so like straight laced, like it just. The guy who almost like finds pleasure in having to like do his job a little too much is sort of like how it kind of is. Because I mean that's literally Duke Nukem at the same time. Like that guy fucking loves being Duke Nukem, the hero of Earth.
I also wonder if right now, because really at the end of the day, the movie, because the first movie's really good, the second one's all right. I didn't see the other two.
The third's actually pretty good too. I'm gonna say that 3 and 4 are still solid. The first is definitely the classic, but I don't think any of them. There's not like a bad one in the bunch.
I remember I heard people say that 3 wasn't as good as 1, but better than 2. I don't know. I haven't seen it, but that's what I heard people say. But I'll have to give it a shot. But it's one of those things where, where was I going with this? What was I saying before? Oh yeah. I feel like because in the movies they do the whole thing where really at the end of the day, they're yeah, sure, they deal with like alien invasion stuff, but they're more than anything just like immigration patrol. Really, that's really what they are at the end of the day. And I think that I still love that movie, but I think if they're trying to do that today, like with their aliens, like yeah, but like it's a little testy to pull that off right now. It's the idea of that of like that Jay being in control of like immigration, like oh no, because the one we get in the movie, that K, he's a little bit more of kind of like welcome to America, this is that, they're more going after the alien. He's like whatever, he has a little bit more compassion, where this one be like no, I'll kill everyone in this whole fucking radius. He wouldn't even stop that cop from being killed by that alien Mikey. He would have just let Mikey just like tear him up and like okay, cool, then kill Mikey.
Yeah, well, I think it's in one of the special features too. Even like Lowell Cunningham even says he's like Kay. It's weird. People come up to me and tell me how much they love Kay, but he's not supposed to be the good guy in it or something like that. He's like almost not even really necessarily even an anti-hero, but like I think that's what makes him fun though, is because he does the shit that you like you wouldn't technically be doing, but like that's what makes it just funny, because he just is the guy who's just like, in a sense, it's like in an era where there's nobody watching over his shoulder, so he literally has authority to do whatever, you know.
Well, it is kind of like, that is something that is interesting about it, because he really is. I mean, he blatantly is the villain of the superhero issue, where there's that guy, because I don't remember, maybe that guy, I mean, he kills some people, but he kills like some guys who are actually criminals. So maybe somewhere in there he like killed a cop or something. I don't remember. But the thing is, he's like, no, we're stomping him because he's stomping on our style, and we can't have that. But what do we do? We do things we do things without like any oversight too. We're like, yeah, because that's what we do. That's what we are. Fuck this guy. And that guy, and I think it's revealed that superhero was like an ex-MIB agent or something to that effect.
I think that was, because sometimes I get those kind of confused, like which issue kind of like had that character in, but I think that's something like that. And it's almost like he went rogue in a sense. So that's sort of what, I mean, like I feel like Kay's still generally always in the right, but he's the guy who makes the tough calls that nobody else kind of, you know, I mean, he's almost like that mercenary you call to clean a situation up because you don't want to get your hands dirty, but he doesn't have a problem doing that if that's what the job is, you know.
Well,
he's technically doing what's right, but he's doing it in like the dark, you know, he's doing the dark job, the dirty jobs, you know what I mean?
He seems like someone who is like on the right side by coincidence. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's coincidentally right every time. You know, it's kind of like he's not right because he's a good moral person. He just happens to just panned out that way. He happens to be right in this situation. In every situation he's ever called for, it's something where it's that choice that the, you know, average person doesn't want to make. But the thing is, he does it with a smile and doesn't give a shit, and that's what makes him so fucking unsettling.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that way. Plus, it's funny. It's funny how everything always works out great for Kay, like in his favor. Jay, no, not at all. Everything works against him.
You know what it kind of reminded me of?
Uh-huh.
It reminded me of that movie, and I kind of liked it more when I saw it, but I saw it again like a few years ago. I'm like, actually, I wish I liked it, because I like 80s action movies. I like this actor, but nah. It reminded me of Bullet to the Head. And the main reason it kind of reminded me of that is because Sylvester Stallone in that movie, he's like, I am the toughest motherfucker alive. I am like 68 years old, and I'm still bench pressing 300 pounds, and I bring my own bourbon with me to the bar, and I pay $20 for a glass because that's what I do. And then you get to like Han from Fast and the Furious, and like he's like, hey man, so let me get this straight. You're an assassin. I'm a cop. You don't like me, I don't like you, but we got to work together. Yeah, I ain't doing that. You know, the whole time, like, it's just like Stallone bitch slapping this guy and making like Asian jokes, and Stallone's always right. It's just kind of like he wrote it too, so it's kind of like one of those things. Like, it's like, I mean, I think we need more of a balance there. Okay, there's the one moment where Stallone needs help and that he shoots a guy. Okay, beyond that, Stallone's always right, and he's always making jokes. The whole time it's like, you can't be doing that, Sylvester Stallone. Like, oh, shut the fuck up. We'll drive your car.
Who wrote this fucking script right here? What's it saying there for your lines? Yeah, that's fucking right.
I'm gonna make sure that's Han. I'm gonna feel like an asshole.
I'm pretty sure it is. Han. I haven't seen that movie in a good while, you know, but I want to say that's totally, because I remember that was like the big selling point of the movie. It had like Stallone, Han, and Aquaman. Because he's the bad guy. Jason Momoa in it.
I like how I type in "Too Fast, Too Furious" and Google.
Han's not in Too Fast, Too Furious, just to let you know.
Oh, right. Fast Furious. Oh, I'm an asshole. Yeah, fuck me. That's bad. Fast and Furious 3. Okay, yeah.
But
I gotta double check.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is. But yeah, well, that movie is. I never really put that together, but that is Stallone's character is definitely being a K in that one, but maybe like not as definitely not nearly as dialed in as like the K's written in the Men in Black comics, because I feel K in the Men in Black comics, like that style of character written really well, because that was the biggest takeaway from this book, is I feel like the K stuff is generally gold in these books. That had me laughing like left and right with like just like how shitty he could be to sort of things, and just like his way of going about it. But then at the same time, you're kind of like, hate to say it, like, yeah, that's kind of dark, but I get it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's some of those things like, yeah, that's the tough decision in case they want to make it, but he'll let Jay figure it out on his own. I like how he just like likes to sit back and go, yeah, you know, you'll learn, buddy.
Maybe. I'll make one more comparison to another show from this. It also kind of reminds me of where there's an episode of The Simpsons, like just the character Jay is in this. Mm-hmm. In the episode of The Simpsons, they're watching some new cop show that everyone's obsessed with, and there's a character. There's two main characters in the show. There's this cool hip black cop who's all like jacked, and then there's like this cool like Miami Vice guy, and then he's like, "What's your name?" Simpson, Homer J. Simpson. Like, oh my God, he's got the same name as me. Like, oh, the new season's on. I'm like, oh, he's like tripping and falling down the stairs. And he's just like, oh man, they made the character named after me, a total idiot.
Yeah, I totally remember that.
It's like totally like. It's like, did you like the whole show just becomes rather than being this cool cop show, the whole show just comes about like, we got to save Homer again. Homer J. Simpson, what'd you do?
It's just like, I do picture, like, I'm going to say this. I'm not too sure if Will Smith probably went back and did a whole lot of like reading through those comics. I feel like he did. I doubt that. I bet you those guys just looked at it as a script and didn't see anything more beyond that. But I have a hard time. Will Smith just flipping through like, yo, wait a second. Which character do you want me to be in this one? Jay, the blonde-haired white guy.
We got a wig.
You the guy who's fucking fumbling the whole time? Like, it couldn't catch a pass to fucking save his life?
Yeah. Want you to, maybe it's time to expand your horizon.
Well, you're clearly not old enough to play K yet, so that's who you are.
No, he probably didn't. I doubt they probably didn't even like have any recommended reading for the comics. So we're not even following the comics that much. Just read the script. You just play Tommy Lee Jones, just play Will Smith. People are gonna love both of you. Go.
Yeah, exactly. That's just done. But yeah, fun stuff. I'm glad to finally have read these books. It's just one of those ones. There's just certain sections of comic books and kind of like those ones that like you kind of hear about and you're like, man, at some point I would like to check these out and read them and go through it. And this was a cool read, you know. It's interesting more than anything else. It's like one of those ones, like it definitely adds more dimension just to the overall Men in Black kind of world. It does maybe kind of wonder almost if the cartoon show tries anything, like maybe just some miscellaneous episodes where like, let's try something that's maybe not totally sci-fi. I'm guessing that might be a far stretch, but
not that. I wonder if they use any characters from the comics or whatever. But another weird one we forgot that is based on a comic, The Mask, and that too had a cartoon show, and apparently that incorporated more villains from the comics. It was not a kid-friendly comic. It was very violent, like satirical. One of those examples of those satirical, like meta comics.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, I watched The Mask like only like 2 months ago or something like that, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go buy the graphic novel, the first volume of it, and read through it, and or the first omnibus. I think there's like 2 or 3 of them, and yeah, it's one of those ones. Like that one is legitimately like a rated R like comic book that they just happen to sort of like tone down, but that one still oddly does capture like a lot of the scenes in there are straight out of the comic. It's just that you take away the excess of blood and gore and violence in there, you know.
Well, I know that's because I flipped through one. I just read a little thing on it, and apparently like Stanley Ipkiss, I don't know why I remember that name, but the Jim Carrey character Stanley Ipkiss, that character dies in the first arc. He's like The Mask. He is then killed by his girlfriend. Apparently he's abusive. He's an asshole. The girlfriend wears the mask. Mm-hmm. And then the cop that was hunting down the mask in the first movie, he becomes the main character for a while. And he's wearing the mask and he's using it. And so it's just weird. And then you think like this had a children's cartoon, you know? It's kind of how the Toxic Avenger had a cartoon. The thing where the Toxic Avenger fucks a porn star, and then like at some point she gets raped by like an evil version of him. The two fetuses are inside of her having a big battle. That has a children's cartoon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that is the interesting thing about the mask, though, is it does like because that's the whole point of it's supposed to be is that like it switches people, and that's how it changes the different ones. So they sort of in the movie they sort of fuse that like those elements of each character kind of together and so on like that. But I would still say the mask was an interesting read. I was pretty captivated by it, and I thought it was a pretty neat kind of story to kind of go with it, and just seeing where it takes it and so on like that, And that's one of probably the few ones that, like, if somebody in the school ground told you that, like, oh man, the Mask comic is, like, it is legitimately pretty violent. Like, it's one of those ones, like, it definitely is the rated R version, which would be, I did kind of think it's like the hard one is trying to replace Jim Carrey, but it would be interesting to see a Mask movie come out that was treated like an R-rated one.
It's probably really hard to ever get a Mask movie off the ground after Son of the Mask, which I'm not lying. I think might be one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
That one hopefully can just get sort of swept under the rug and just bypass. But I think the hardest part
the Son of the Mask shaped lump there under that rug that you just stomp down and don't go away.
It keeps getting bigger. It's just like the mask itself. It just never, no matter how many times you toss it out and everything like that, it always comes back.
Yeah.
But I think it's replacing Jim Carrey. That's like one of the toughest ones to be like, well, who are you going to get to be play Jim Carrey?
Jamie Kennedy?
Ryan Reynolds, the Jim Carrey knockoff? No, he's just going to feel like 2-bit Jim Carrey if you do it that way.
Jamie Kennedy. You got Jamie Kennedy to cover for Jim Carrey. God.
You're just getting things that rhyme, like...
Everyone liked Malibu's Most Wanted. Like,
it was fun. I'm not gonna, but it was a time and a place.
Did everyone love it? I don't remember.
Yeah, one of those ones. But yeah, Men in Black, good comics if you can find them. They're on the archive.org, so there is a place to check them out. They're well worth for any sort of 90s era person. I think it's definitely worth kind of reading and getting a little deep dive to see kind of the alternative universe of this, and to watch the fun play on of K torturing J. But yeah, good stuff there. So beyond that, go to oldmanorange.com for more podcasts, comic books like Pizza Boys, old animations, and all that fun stuff. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Ryan Dunnigan.
And we'll see you some other time.
Later, folks.